You wake up. You brush your teeth. You go to work or school. You interact with people. You eat what you've always eaten. You think what you've always thought. And yet, not once do you pause to ask, why this routine? Why this belief? Why this life? From the moment you're born, you begin to absorb. You inherit a language you didn't choose, a religion you didn't question, a culture you didn't design. Your parents tell you what's right. Your school tells you what's real. Your community tells you who you are. And little by little, your mind begins to conform not by force, but by design. The world doesn't hand you freedom. It hands you a script, a silent script, written by those before you, by parents who were themselves programmed, by teachers who followed the curriculum, by leaders who protect the system. You are taught what to value, what to fear, what to chase. You are told what success looks like, what failure means, who your heroes are, and what truths to accept without question. And because this script surrounds you like air, you mistake it for reality. You believe you're making choices, but most of what you call choice is nothing more than conditioned response. You follow patterns set by people you've never met, molded by institutions you've never examined. Your identity is constructed, not chosen. Your desires are planted, not discovered. Even your sense of right and wrong, etched into your moral compass, was shaped long before you had the consciousness to question it. But what if everything you think is normal was designed to keep you from seeing something deeper? What if your beliefs are borrowed, your goals assigned, your dreams manufactured? Every society has its myths, myths that become invisible once everyone believes them. The myth of the self-made individual, the myth of progress, the myth of freedom. These aren't inherently false, but they are incomplete, and often, they're weaponized. The most powerful form of control is not when someone tells you what to do, it's when they make you believe it was your idea all along. Look closely at your life. How many of your habits, routines, fears, and goals truly came from within you? How much of your identity would remain if everything external, your family, your nation, your religion, your gender, was stripped away? This isn't a rejection of these things. This is an invitation to investigate them, because if you never question the source of your programming, you'll spend your entire life acting out someone else's script, thinking it's your own. We live in a world where silence programs more effectively than speech, where invisibility is the strongest force of control, where the absence of questions is more dangerous than the presence of answers. You are not weak for being influenced. You are human, but you are powerful the moment you start to see it. The silent architect of your life has always been there behind the scenes, building you from the inside out. But the moment you become aware of the blueprint, you have a choice. Continue building the same house, or redesign it completely. Reality, it turns out, is programmable. But only if you realize you're already inside the code. If the world is a stage, then your mind is the stage, crew working silently, behind the scenes, shaping what you see, what you believe, and how you act. But what if that crew didn't work for you? From the moment you begin to form thoughts, a psychological process begins. It's not random, it's structured, it's deliberate, and in many cases, it's been engineered. Let's start with the basics. Every human mind is wired to seek patterns, avoid pain, and find belonging. These survival mechanisms once kept us alive, but in the hands of the wrong architect, they become the perfect tools of control. Carl Jung believed that beneath your individual consciousness lies something deeper, the collective unconscious, a realm of symbols, archetypes, and shared mental blueprints passed down through generations. These inherited ideas shape how you perceive the world without you ever noticing. You don't just learn what a hero is, you feel it. You don't just recognize power, you sense it. These internal patterns form the foundation of your mental operating system. Long before you install your first belief, now enter B.F. Skinner, the father of behavioral conditioning. Skinner's experiments showed how behavior can be molded through rewards and punishments. A rat presses a lever and receives food. A child obeys and is praised. A citizen conforms and is accepted. Repeat this cycle often enough, and the individual stops thinking. They simply respond, react, obey. Not because they're forced, but because their mind has been shaped to expect reward or fear consequence. But perhaps the most dangerous architect of modern programming was not a scientist, but a public relations genius, Edward Bernays. Bernays understood something terrifying, that people do not make decisions based on logic but emotion. He used his uncle Sigmund Freud's work on the unconscious mind to manipulate public opinion. He made it fashionable for women to smoke by branding cigarettes as torches of freedom. He helped corporations sell products not by highlighting function, but by linking them to identity, status, and emotion. Bernays didn't just sell items. He sold ideas. He showed the world that if you can tap into people's unconscious fears and desires, you don't have to control them through force. You can guide them gently, invisibly, and they will thank you for it. This is the foundation of psychological programming. If you control the input, you control the output. If you shape the environment, you shape the person, and the most effective. Programming doesn't come through commands, it comes through repetition. Repetition bypasses logic. It trains the nervous system. Say something enough times, and it stops being a message, it becomes a truth. It doesn't matter if it's false. If it's heard often enough, especially from trusted sources, it begins to feel like reality. As children, we are especially vulnerable. The first 7 years of life are spent in what scientists call a theta brainwave stata, deeply receptive mode, almost like hypnosis. In this state, a child absorbs beliefs without filter. The words of parents become gospel. The tone of teachers becomes law. The expectations of society become destiny. You didn't choose your early programming. It was chosen for you. And while we'd like to believe we grow out of it, most of us never do. We simply trade childhood authorities for adult ones. Politicians, experts, celebrities, algorithms, algorithms. In the digital age, psychological programming has been automated. Every click, every scroll, every like feeds a system designed not to inform you, but to condition you. Social media platforms track what holds your attention, what makes you angry, what makes you feel seen. Then they feed you more of it again and again until your worldview is narrowed, hardened, and often manipulated. This isn't accidental. It's intentional design. Advertisers use the same behavioral tricks Skinner discovered. Politicians use Bernays' emotional hooks. Influencers leverage Jungian archetypes to seem like saviors, or rebels, or prophets. And while you think you're consuming content, the truth is you're being consumed. The problem isn't just that your beliefs are being shaped, it's that you don't know when it's happening. And here's where it gets even more fascinating. It feels natural. It feels like your own voice. And that's what makes it so dangerous. Psychological programming works best when it's invisible, when it disguises itself as common sense, culture, or personal opinion. But here's the truth. Every unexamined belief is a potential virus in your mental software. Every unchallenged narrative is a backdoor into your decision-making. And unless you learn to debug your own mind, to trace your beliefs back to their source, to ask who benefits from me thinking this way, you will continue to live out a life written by someone else. Your mind is programmable. That's not the danger. That's the opportunity. Because once you understand how you've been programmed, you can begin to reprogram. Not for someone else's agenda, not for profit, not for obedience, but for truth, for clarity, for freedom. When you hear the word matrix, you probably imagine digital green code, machines farming humans, and a man in a trench coat choosing between red and blue pills. But what if the matrix was never really about computers at all? What if the matrix was about belief, not the kind you declare out loud, but the kind you live without question, the kind that builds your world from the inside out, the kind you never notice because everyone else believes it too. This is where the illusion begins, not in a machine, but in the human mind. You're not trapped in a simulation made of wires. You're trapped in a simulation made of words, stories, symbols, and assumptions. A psychological construct so immersive, so total, that you forget it's even there. You call it reality, but it's not yours. It was installed long before you could understand what you were absorbing. This is what writer William Gibson once called a consensual hallucination, a shared dream so consistent, so omnipresent, that it becomes indistinguishable from truth. From the moment you could comprehend language, you were told stories about who you are, where you came from, what's good, what's evil, what's normal. You were given flags, heroes, enemies, slogans. You were taught to measure your life against standards you never chose, and to fear outcomes that were defined by others. It didn't feel like programming. It felt like education. But make no mistake, this is the architecture of the matrix, beliefs that shape perception, and perception that shapes experience. When enough people believe the same illusion, it becomes a cultural operating system, a myth turned machine. History is filled with examples. In Nazi Germany, entire generations were raised to believe that purity was power, that certain lives were more valuable than others, that obedience to the fatherland was sacred. Propaganda wasn't just printed, it was performed through uniforms, rituals, films, music. It wasn't just in the media, it was in the architecture, in the silence of those who knew better, in the language spoken at the dinner table. Millions didn't just follow orders, they lived inside a story, a hallucination that justified horror. Colonial empires used a similar script. They told themselves they were civilizing the world, bringing light to darkness. But beneath that noble mask was a violent extraction of resources, identities, and dignity. Entire continents were framed as backward, so they could be conquered without guilt. A psychological illusion that allowed men to enslave, dominate, and kill while believing they were doing something virtuous. Even the Cold War wasn't fought on battlefields alone, it was fought in narratives. America versus the Soviet Union wasn't just a geopolitical standoff. It was a war of worldviews. One framed itself as the land of freedom, the other as the champion of equality. Each side painted the other as the enemy of humanity. And entire generations grew up seeing the world not as it was, but as their leaders told them it had to be. But these illusions didn't end with history. They evolved. Today's matrix wears a friendlier face. It speaks in brand slogans, lifestyle, trends, political soundbites, and influencer mantras. It tells you to be yourself, as long as that self fits into marketable categories. It urges you to chase freedom by buying the right products, voting the right way, following the right people. It promises connection while monetizing your isolation, and we participate willingly. We scroll, we swipe, we curate, we perform, not because we're forced to, but because the matrix has learned the ultimate trick to make the illusion feel like choice. But what if your thoughts are not entirely your own? What if your dreams were planted, your fears installed, your values downloaded from systems designed not to free you but to keep you predictable, profitable, and compliant? That's not a conspiracy theory. It's psychology. Studies show that humans will conform to group opinion even when they know it's wrong. We filter reality through what others believe. We seek safety in sameness. We avoid the pain of questioning, because questioning leads to isolation, and isolation feels like death. But real thinking, the kind that frees you, always begins in solitude. The matrix isn't sustained by some all-powerful elite. It's sustained by collective agreement, by our unwillingness to challenge what everyone knows, by our need to belong more than our desire to be awake. So here's the unsettling truth. The matrix is not a cage someone put you in. It's a story you agreed to live inside, but once you see it, even just for a moment, you can't unsee it. You notice how language shapes reality, how media shapes emotion, how systems shape behavior. You begin to trace your thoughts to their origin and realize how many of them were implanted, not chosen. That's when the walls begin to crack. That's when you stop reacting to the world and start reconstructing it. No, you won't bend spoons or fly, but you'll do something far more radical. You'll reclaim the right to define what's real, and in a world where billions live inside illusions, nothing is more dangerous or more powerful. We are told that we are free to choose what to wear, what to eat, what to buy, who to love, how to live. We scroll through infinite options, vote in democratic elections, pick between hundreds of products in brightly lit aisles. This is what freedom looks like, isn't it? But what if this freedom is a carefully constructed illusion, a curated experience designed not to liberate you but to keep you inside the system, believing you're in control? Jean Baudrillard once wrote that we no longer live in reality, but in simulations, imitations of freedom, echoes of meaning, symbols that replace the truth they once represented. We think we're choosing, but in truth, we're only consuming pre-selected identities, beliefs, and lifestyles. The options may vary in color, in flavor, in language, but they all come from the same source. Consider the modern political landscape. 2 candidates, 2 parties, 2 ideologies. And yet behind the curtain, the mechanisms of control remain largely untouched. Surveillance expands, wars continue, corporations grow. You are told that your vote matters, but what you're really doing is choosing the flavor of your captor. The same illusion plays out in consumerism. You walk into a store and see 50 brands of cereal. It feels empowering until you realize they're all owned by the same 3 conglomerates. You believe you're making a personal decision, when in reality, you're moving within a sandbox of pre-approved choices, none of which challenge the system that created them. Yuval Noah Harari warns of this exact trap. In a world where technology knows your preferences better than you do, choice becomes a performance. Algorithms predict, suggest, and ultimately steer your decisions. Your next click, your next purchase, your next belief, all feels like it came from you. But behind the scenes, complex systems are working to ensure it didn't. This is the tragedy of the modern age. Agency has been replaced by reactivity. We don't act, we respond. We don't initiate, we swipe, scroll, and submit. Instead of forging identity, we adopt templates. Instead of questioning systems, we accessorize them. And when discomfort arises, the system has a ready-made solution. Escape through more options. Feeling trapped. Change your wardrobe. Feeling powerless. Buy a new course. Feeling unfulfilled. Rebrand yourself. There is always another version of you waiting in the marketplace. Another identity to purchase. Another label to wear. But no matter how many times you change costumes, the stage remains the same. This isn't freedom. It's domestication. A consumer trained to feel empowered by selecting from a menu written by someone else. Noam Chomsky said it plainly. The smart way to keep people passive and obedient is to strictly limit the spectrum of acceptable opinion, but allow very lively debate within that spectrum. That's the illusion, the trap. You argue, protest, invest. Consume all within invisible boundaries you didn't create. You believe you're escaping the cage, when you're just running from one end of it to the other. Real freedom doesn't come from having endless options. It comes from having the ability to create your own. And here's where it gets even more fascinating. To step outside the pre-approved narratives. To reject the roles handed to you. To ask questions that aren't on the script. That's where agency begins, not with what you can choose from, but with your power to choose differently. But here's the most dangerous question of all. What if the system isn't broken? What if it's working exactly as it was designed to? to keep you occupied, to keep you docile, to keep you believing you're free, while never giving you the tools to truly be free. The illusion of choice is the most elegant form of control, because when you think you're choosing, you stop looking for who's choosing for you. You were born into a system you didn't choose. You were given beliefs you didn't question. You were shaped by forces you never saw. But here's the truth they never told you. You can rewrite the code. The same mind that was programmed can be reprogrammed. This is not just philosophy. It's neuroscience. The human brain is not a static machine. It's plastic, malleable, constantly reshaping itself in response to new experiences, thoughts, and environments. Scientists call this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself based on what you focus on, repeat, and emotionally engage with. That means every belief you hold, every fear you carry, every limit you think is permanent, can be changed. But change doesn't begin with willpower. It begins with awareness. You can't change what you're not conscious of, and so the first step in self-programming is learning to observe the inner dialogue that runs your life. The quiet voice in your head that says you're not good enough, that success is only for others, that love must be earned, that suffering is normal. This voice is not your enemy, but it's not your truth either. It's a script, installed over years, repeated until it became familiar. Familiar until it felt like you. Through mindfulness, the ancient practice of watching thought without judgment, you begin to see your programming for what it is, a pattern, a loop, a mental habit you don't have to obey. You are not your thoughts. You are the one observing them. From this place of awareness, the second tool becomes possible: narrative rewriting. Every belief you have is part of a story, and every story has a narrator. Most people let society narrate for them, shaping their identity through media, culture, and inherited trauma. But what if you became the author? What if you rewrote the narrative? Instead of "I always fail," it becomes "I'm still learning." Instead of "people can't be trusted," it becomes "I now attract honesty." Instead of "I have no control," it becomes "I choose how I respond." Cognitive behavioral therapy, one of the most effective psychological frameworks, is built on this very idea, that thoughts create emotions, emotions shape actions, and actions reinforce beliefs. Change the thought, and the system recalibrates. Not instantly, but consistently. Yet it's not just mental. The environment matters. If you live in chaos, your mind will reflect it. If you surround yourself with negativity, your thoughts will echo it. If your digital world is filled with distraction and fear, your inner world will become fragmented and anxious. Self-programming requires environmental design. This means intentionally crafting a world that reinforces the mindset you want to live in, books that expand you, people who challenge and support you, spaces that create clarity, silence that invites introspection. Even the music you listen to becomes code, programming emotion, focus, energy. This is not about perfection. It's about intention. It's about designing your world to reflect your inner commitment to growth. But what about the weight we carry? The pain that seems too old, too deep, too stubborn. That's where the emotional layer enters. You cannot reprogram yourself. If your emotional system is clogged with unresolved grief, shame, and fear, suppressed emotion is unprocessed energy. It loops through your body, distorting perception and hijacking behavior. No amount of positive thinking can override trauma that hasn't been felt. This is where emotional detox becomes critical. It may come through journaling, therapy, breathwork, honest conversation, or silent surrender. But unless the heart is clear, the mind will remain confused. Because perception is not just what you see, it's how you feel about what you see. And when your emotional system is healed, reality begins to shift. Not because the world changed, but because your lens did. Eastern philosophy has always known this. That freedom is not something you fight for. It's something you remember, a state of inner sovereignty, where peace doesn't depend on circumstances, where power doesn't come from control, but from alignment. And when you live in alignment, the world stops feeling like a trap. It becomes a mirror, reflecting back the version of you that you chose to become. You may still live inside the system. You may still pay taxes, vote in elections, walk through shopping malls and digital feeds. But inside, you've changed. You no longer react like a machine. You respond like a creator. And that's the secret they never wanted you to discover. That the most dangerous person in a controlled society is the one who has taken back control of their mind. You don't need chains to be imprisoned. You only need constant distraction. We live in an age where our attention is the most valuable currency and the most ruthlessly exploited. You don't pay for the internet. You are the payment. Your focus, your thoughts, your emotions, your behavior. All packaged, tracked, predicted, and sold. But this is not just about ads. This is about control. In ancient times, power was maintained through brute force armies, walls, weapons. Today, it's maintained through subtle psychological engineering, through screens, through algorithms, through infinite scrolls and curated outrage. You are not being informed, you are being stimulated. Tristan Harris, a former Google design ethicist, warned the world in The Social Dilemma. Technology is not neutral. The systems behind your favorite apps were engineered to hijack your biology, specifically your dopamine circuitry, that small chemical in your brain responsible for anticipation, motivation, reward. Every notification, every red badge, every buzz on your phone, it's not random, it's a behavioral loop, a microhook designed to create a compulsive relationship with your device, to keep you locked into a feed that never ends, a conflict that never resolves, a cycle that never pauses. You are not distracted by accident. You are distracted by design, and the consequences are not just wasted hours, they are wasted lives. Because when your attention is fragmented, so is your self-awareness. You lose the thread of your own thoughts. You forget what you were reflecting on. You stop questioning what matters. And slowly, you become passive-fed by content instead of feeding your own curiosity. This is modern-day mind control. It doesn't require censorship. It requires overload. Too much noise. Too many crises. Too many voices competing for your outrage. And in that noise, something vital goes silent, your ability to think deeply, critically, and independently. This is not a glitch. It's the system functioning perfectly, and here's where it gets even more fascinating. Outrage culture fuels engagement. Echo chambers boost loyalty. Fear drives clicks. Conflict keeps you returning for more. Your brain, wired to detect danger, becomes addicted to controversy, and the more you react, the less you reflect. Social media isn't connecting us, it's conditioning us to respond instantly, to judge without nuance, to post without context, to reduce complex human issues into hashtags, memes, and viral trends, to confuse visibility with truth and volume with value. And in the background, machine learning models gather everything: your scroll speed, your pause duration, your emotional reactions. The system doesn't just know what you like, it knows how to keep you liking. It's evolving faster than you are. But this isn't only about tech. The same architecture of control exists in education. Schools were once places of inquiry, but many have become factories of obedience. Bells signal transitions. Desks are lined in rows. Creativity is confined to electives. Standardized tests measure conformity, not intelligence. Questions are replaced by correct answers. Exploration is sacrificed for performance. We're not teaching children how to think. We're teaching them how to behave. Sit still. Memorize. Don't challenge. Authority. Regurgitate. Obey. This model wasn't designed to cultivate consciousness. It was designed during the industrial age to create reliable workers, not independent minds, and it worked. Generations grew up believing success meant compliance, that good grades meant intelligence, that productivity meant worth. So when they entered adulthood, they became perfect citizens for a distracted age, always busy, always anxious, always consuming, but rarely questioning. And those who do question, they're labeled as rebellious, conspiratorial, irrational, dangerous, because the system doesn't reward awakening, it rewards alignment. Even entertainment, once a source of art and reflection, has become saturated with distraction, endless reboots, predictable plots, manufactured controversy, sensationalism over substance. The market doesn't care if it's meaningful. It only cares if it's clickable. And the more noise you're exposed to, the harder it becomes to hear your own signal. Your inner voice, the one that whispers in moments of silence, is drowned out by the scream of a system that fears your clarity. Because if you were truly still, truly focused, truly awake, you might stop consuming, you might start creating, you might stop reacting, you might start resisting. The modern world doesn't need you to be evil. It only needs you to be busy. Too busy to ask why. Too busy to go inward. Too busy to notice that you're being trained, not to think, but to feel distracted enough to never go deeper. This is the invisible prison. No bars, no guards, just infinite choices that lead nowhere. Just infinite updates that never resolve. Just infinite content that leaves you empty. And the most terrifying part, you asked for it, you downloaded it, you logged in, you consented, not knowingly, but passively. Because modern mind control doesn't need your permission. It only needs your attention. And while you're watching the screen, someone else is writing the code. Someone else is shaping the narrative. Someone else is deciding what you believe. But it doesn't have to stay this way, because the same tools used to distract you can be turned off. And the moment you reclaim your focus, your attention, your time, you don't just break the system spell. You remember something that's been buried under 1,000 scrolls and 1,000,000 notifications. Your mind is still yours, but only if you fight for it. The world may be loud, the systems may be powerful, the distractions may be endless, but beneath the noise, something quiet remains. Something that was never programmed, never manipulated, never sold. Your awareness. The war for your mind is real, but so is your power to win it. Because no matter how sophisticated the machinery of control becomes, how many narratives flood your screen, how many fears hijack your thoughts, how many identities the system tries to sell you, there's one place it cannot reach unless you invite it in, your inner world. That's where your sovereignty lives. Viktor Frankl, a survivor of the Holocaust and a pioneer of existential psychology, said it best: everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. He lost his family, he lost his home, he lost almost everything, but he refused to lose his inner autonomy. And that's the first truth of sovereignty. It isn't given, it's claimed, not in loud protest, but in quiet recognition. The recognition that you are the only one who can determine the meaning of your life. Not society, not trends, not trauma, you. Marcus Aurelius, writing in a war-torn empire, spoke of a similar power. That true strength lies not in conquering others, but in mastering the self, in detaching from the chaos outside and anchoring in a code of clarity within. That storms will come, empires will fall, but the mind can remain still. Krishnamurti took it further. He taught that true freedom is not rebellion against the system, it is freedom from the system. Not reacting, not resisting, but transcending. Seeing through the illusion, not just fighting it. Refusing to be trapped in the cycle of reaction. Choosing silence over noise, stillness over chaos, truth over comfort. Because here's the paradox. The more you chase freedom in the outside world, the more you become a slave to it. The moment you believe that you need something out there to feel complete, you've already handed over your power. Reclaiming inner sovereignty starts when you turn inward, not to escape the world, but to understand it. It begins with silence, not just the absence of sound, but the removal of unnecessary input. The pause between scrolls, the space between thoughts, the refusal to react. In that silence, you begin to notice the stories running in your head, the inherited beliefs, the performative identities, the looping fears. And as you notice, you begin to separate from them, to see that you are not your thoughts, not your past, not your programming. You are the space in which they all appear. From that space, new choices become possible. You can choose what you consume, what you allow in, what you believe, what you let go. You can rebuild your environment to reflect your clarity. You can disconnect not just from devices, but from identities that no longer serve you. And here's where it gets even more fascinating. This is not a one-time act. It's a daily discipline. The discipline of alignment, of living in harmony with the truth you know, not the truth you've been told, of honoring your inner signal, even when the world rewards the noise, of choosing meaning over momentum, depth over popularity, peace over performance. Reclaiming sovereignty does not mean controlling the world. It means refusing to be controlled by it. And when you take back that control, subtly, quietly, courageously, you don't just shift your own reality, you shift the collective story, because every awakened mind becomes a mirror, every sovereign soul becomes a signal, and every silent act of clarity becomes a rebellion far louder than any scream. Silence the noise, recode your mind, rewrite your world. You were not born to be controlled. You were not born to follow orders, to obey trends, to repeat the same patterns passed down by frightened generations. You were not born to scroll your life away, to argue with strangers over illusions, or to chase things that never truly belonged to you. You were born with something rare, something untouchable, something sacred: awareness, the ability to see, to reflect, to choose. But somewhere along the way, that gift was stolen, not through violence, through suggestion, not through chains, through stories. You were taught how to behave, how to succeed, how to survive, but never how to think beyond the lines, never how to listen to the voice beneath the noise, never how to challenge the system shaping your thoughts before you could even name them. This is the tragedy of modern existence. Not that we are powerless, but that we've been convinced we are. The systems are sophisticated. The distractions are addictive. The illusions are convincing. But deep down, you've always known. You felt the quiet ache, that dull resistance, that silent rebellion in your bones that whispered, "This isn't it. This can't be all there is. There must be more." You were right. There is more. But no one's going to give it to you, because the truth is dangerous. It doesn't fit neatly into algorithms. It can't be monetized. It can't be predicted. And that truth is this: if you do not program your reality, someone else will. If you do not write your script, you'll spend your life acting in someone else's play. If you do not awaken, you will be used. Used as a consumer, used as a follower, used as data, as fuel for systems that do not care if you're fulfilled, only that you're compliant. You've seen it already. In politics that promise change, but deliver obedience. In education that rewards memorization, but punishes curiosity. In media that amplifies fear and silences thought. In culture that sells rebellion but delivers conformity. You are given choices between red and blue, Coke and Pepsi, left and right choices that appear different but serve the same. Structured on, and then they ask you to pick a side. But what if the real rebellion is not in choosing a side, but in choosing yourself? What if the real revolution isn't in fighting the system, but in becoming free from it? Because the truth is not out there. It's in here, in the moments of stillness, in the space between thoughts, in the radical act of reclaiming your own mind. You don't need permission to wake up. You don't need approval to unplug. You don't need validation to begin again. You only need one thing, a decision, a quiet, unwavering decision that enough is enough, that your life is not a product, that your soul is not for sale, that your consciousness belongs to you. No more default settings, no more inherited fears, no more programmed desires. You begin to ask, who wrote this story? Whose voice am I hearing in my head? Whose definition of success am I chasing? Whose approval am I still trying to earn? And then you realize it was never really you. It was a mixture of echoes, of parents who were afraid, of teachers who were blind, of media that needed you addicted, of systems that feared your awakening. But now you see it, and seeing is the first step to freedom. The next is choosing, not once, every day, every moment, to pause before you react, to reflect before you conform, to rewrite before you repeat. You begin to program your own mind with questions instead of assumptions, with silence instead of noise, with meaning instead of momentum. You consume less and create more. You compare less and feel more. You chase less and become more. Not perfect, but conscious, intentional, alive. And as you rise, you begin to feel it, not the comfort of certainty, but the thrill of clarity. The system won't applaud you for this. It won't make it easy, because an awakened mind threatens every system built on manipulation. But you didn't come here to please the system. You came to transcend it. So here you are, at the edge of the script, the final page of the story. You didn't write, and the pen is in your hand. You can keep playing the role you were assigned, or you can write something new, something terrifying, something liberating, something true, because in the end, there is no neutrality. You will either be programmed, or you will program. You will either be defined, or you will define. You will either follow the world, or rebuild it. And here's where it gets even more fascinating. The choice is not easy, but it is yours, and it begins now.